OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We've got rugby with Alan Quinlan, the latest sports news with John Duggan, and the crappy quiz still to come this morning. But right now, time to get into the GA quick picks.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just dismiss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Will Aisling, morning.
Morning guys, how you get on?
Morning, Owen.
How's the form?
Good now, not too bad. How are you?
Owen is top of the table by some distance. I know we had some cancellations last weekend, and I probably would have nudged a little bit further up the table, but Owen is 20 out of 29 so far, Owen.
Yeah.
68% strike rate. It's pretty good. I mean,
yeah, the
rest of us are pathetic after that, to be honest. Tommy's 55, Will 55, and myself and Aisling are battling it out there, just nudging over that 50%.
Well, I didn't get a chance last week.
That's true.
Or the week before, the week before, it looks like. I mean, Aisling just hasn't got going.
I just
not
had
the Nostradamus
one
team OTB.
That is true. That is true. That is true. Right, let's get into this week. See what we got. We're going to kick off with Donegal, Tyrone, and it is Tyrone across the board here. Is it going to be that clear cut, Aisling?
I think so. I think this will be a big game for Tyrone. They edged past Kildare last weekend. I think Donegal will probably endure a tough day because they're going to be without Michael Langle and Michael Murphy. A lot of talk at the moment as well about they're heavily reliant on Michael Murphy, and I do think that is the case. I actually remember watching them last year, the championship game against Derry, and he came off the bench. I don't even think he was fully fit. And this was a turning point. The reason I mention it is because I think this when I realised, wow, this is how heavily reliant they are on him. He basically wasn't really involved with the ball too much. He just took two players out of the game and created so much space for Donegal to push on. And basically Derry players just followed him. And so that's the impact he had. So I think without him, they'll find it tough, Tyrone, on the other hand, they got their first win against Kildare last weekend, just about a really important win for them. And they done it with missing four of their key players in particular, Padraig Campsey, Kieran McGeary, Peter Hart, Michael McKiernan. So they're all back as well. Some of the younger lads got a chance last week, the likes of Derek Canavan, he started. So all those things are really positive. And when I spoke to Brian Dewar after the game, he said, it was a chance for those lads to really get a start, to put their hand up. And then we got a win. So we've really kicked the campaign off eventually. And they're just hoping to push on now. So I think that they'll do it easy enough. Yeah,
the four lads back. I think that's probably going to tip the scales there. Kildare Dublin is next up. It's Kildare for Aisling, Kildare for Will, Kildare for Owen, and I am going for Dublin. I am actually really surprised to see that I am the outlier in that regard. Like I get that Kildare have left their mark on Division 1. Kildare. I do accept that they've left their mark on Division 1, to be fair, and like there's a growing body of evidence to suggest that they're not quite in the deep end, but they're doing okay. Look, they've still got one draw to show for their campaign so far, and I would argue as well in the context of this game that there might be 10 teams that on their day in the country at the minute might actually beat Dublin. So there is the context of that, and Kildare are probably amongst that group. You would say, and the reason that I'm going for Dublin here, to give the rationale, that there isn't, people are talking about the idea of going to Newbridge, like going to Newbridge or going to Auckram or going to Portlaoise for this Dublin team really is not a thing that overly concerns them that much. It doesn't hold any fear for them. The rot has to stop at some point. I know there's a bit of mad logic to that, but it does have to stop at some point or another. And I think that when you look across that Dublin team, you look at Small, Fitzsimons, Fenton, Howard, Bugler, Kilkenny, Rock, like they are class. Now, I know they haven't shown it so far this year, but I expect it to come out in Newbridge.
I'm not sure what the other. I'm surprised it is 3-1 because I definitely had Dublin down here for a while before changing to Kildare, because I think right now if we're in the predictions game, I mean we've gone so far. Like having tipped Mayo last week and kind of been unsure about that, you got to keep going. You got to keep tipping against Dublin until they eventually win, and it is going to happen eventually. I'm not, the venue thing is an interesting one because I think we've spoken about this quite a bit. The Croke Park and the open spaces for someone like Daniel Flynn and Jimmy Hyland would probably provide them with more opportunities to kill off this Dublin team than Newbridge will provide on Sunday. But there is the other element of them being at home, and they've clearly used that home advantage as a pretty significant kind of siege-like scenario in the past in Championship, the Mayo game being the obvious example a few years ago. So that one's kind of a bit of a toss of a coin. But I think at the moment, like, if there's no more players back for Dublin again this weekend, and it's the same team as last weekend, and they've got opened up 3 games in a row, I think they're probably going to get opened up again. Will they be able to? Will Kildare be able to keep enough at the other end of the side, because I think they'll have enough in attack to put up a decent enough tally, is the question, and that's down to the Dublin forwards to try and ratchet it up one more this week.
Yeah, and they're not, like, Kildare for me, just not seasoned enough. They had opportunities to kill off that game against Tyrone a couple of weeks ago late on, a bit panicky at the end when they could have tapped one over and gone a couple clear, but so that's my rationale. Mayo Armagh is where we're going to move swiftly on to next, and I'm again the outlier here, and I'm sort of again kind of blindly sticking to my guns here. The 3 of you going for Mayo and I'm going for Armagh. Well,
toughest game of the weekend to call, I think.
Yeah.
Up there with Kildare and Dublin, definitely. Like, again, Armagh, so impressive. Not to blow my own trumpet, but it called the draw correctly between Armagh and Monaghan last week. Thanks a lot to the officials for not spotting a penalty that went about 2 feet over the line, which would have probably ruined that prediction. But again, like, Armagh have backed up their performances, and again, that was a really good display. Probably unlucky not to win against Monaghan last weekend. Like, at the same time, how good were Mayo at Croke Park? I thought they created goal chances. I thought, for all the talk about Dublin and where Dublin are at, Mayo again went and looked really comfortable in that game where they defeated Dublin. I've been impressed by Mayo so far. Like, it's hard to read so much into maybe that first game against Donegal, which was played in such treacherous conditions, but still Mayo got out of that one without being defeated. And I just think they've impressed me so far, and I think they're going to edge a very, very narrow one against Armagh this weekend. This is probably game of the weekend in Division 1, albeit probably a lot of the attention is going to go on Newbridge because of the potential implications for Dublin if they're defeated, and the fact they'd be in a relegation battle. But I think this could be the best game of football this weekend.
Mayo losing Castlebar has been a good thing. This, if you look at their the last time they were in Division 1, I'm not sure, did they lose all their games in Castlebar? I can't remember how 2019 went, but definitely kind of just thinking about what they've done on the road and not being, it's a home game, but they're not at home this weekend. I'm not sure, like, I don't know what happened to them there over the last little while, but they looked so good at the weekend once again, and I think the height will probably suit them a little bit. It is, Will is right, this is the game of the weekend, Mayo Armagh. One
of the biggest surprises with these entire predictions is that some of these games are so obviously easy to call a draw for, and, you know, our friend up there in the top right has so easily gone for the draw when it wasn't even that obvious at times. Although one of them did come off well, to be fair to you. I was so tempted to go for a draw, but having... One of
them will eventually hit the mark if you throw
it. They will. I was so tempted, I just couldn't bring myself. Let's bundle Offaly Meath first of all, and then Clare Derry together. We're all going for Meath, and then Clare Derry. Derry all the way. Aisling, Meath, what's your... this weekend isn't going to cause you wouldn't expect to cause the greatest trouble for this Meath team. Where are they at overall?
Yeah, it's tough as a Meath supporter at the minute. They lost to Galway, that game that you just like to forget. They lost to Roscommon by 4 points, and then they drew it down then as well. And it's just a really bad enough start for them. You know, I personally thought Down would have won the game last weekend, but they're probably another county that's not fully reaching their potential. But yeah, that's another story. But the loss to Galway probably in particular was really tough. I just hope that they can get this win over Offaly, which I do think they will comfortably. Sorry, Will. Put in a good performance and then push on from this point. You know, they're lacking that cohesion, momentum, all of these things that are just so important. They just look like they're lacking. They're not clicking at the minute. And they've really talented footballers. And it's just about getting them playing together as a team, regaining that confidence. Offaly, on the other hand, they lost to Clare by 9 points and Derry by 12 points. So you'd like to see Meath now getting this win by 5 to 6 points at least.
Yeah, and Derry, one of the foreign teams in the country as well. That's the football. That's where we leave that. On to the hurling now. Tipperary, Dublin, first up in 1B. Tip across the board. Will, Dublin have been grand, but Tipperary at home is too much for them, isn't it?
I don't know. I think Dublin have been a little bit better than grand. I think very good result first time out against Waterford, getting a draw, and then went to Corrigan Park, which was a very difficult place to go last season, and got themselves a win. So they're already up and running in a pretty decent position in Division 1B ahead of this game, where we're probably going to learn a little bit about Dublin with how they perform at Semple Stadium, because Tipperary last time out didn't exactly sparkle against the young Kilkenny team, but just about got the job done. They're definitely transitioning with the style of hurling that they're playing, which hasn't fallen perfectly with all Tipperary supporters. Some of them aren't a fan of maybe some of the extra defensive system that they've been using, but I saw the team that they had named last night. They've got a stellar forward line, Tipperary, ahead of this game at Thurles on Saturday. And I just think a bit like the Kilkenny game, Tipperary will have a little bit too much for Dublin on Saturday.
How have you not gone for a draw in the Galway Wexford game, which we can bring up on screen now and see which way everybody's gone? Galway across the board. You were talking them down. The hurling pod was rounding on Galway.
Was it?
Were you not?
I think James Skehill was being very tactical and clever by saying that Wexford were the best team in the country currently ahead of the game against Galway, putting all the pressure onto Derry Egan's side after two impressive wins for both teams so far in the league. Both have beaten Limerick in the opening two fixtures before the break. So this is a real test for a Wexford team, Adrian, who are playing a different style of hurling as well. They're looking to get the ball in. Last time out, they had both Rory O'Connor and Conor MacDonald a little bit closer to goal. So they're not playing in the same way that they did under Davy Fitzgerald in recent seasons. And a very nice brand of hurling as well. Go to Salt Hill against Galway, who went out and did a proper job on Limerick just before the break. They were so impressive, particularly in the last 15 minutes. Colin Mannion has been brilliant for Galway this year. As a result, they have flown up the GA power ranking since, and they're in fourth place going into this weekend. And if Galway were to back it up and beat a Wexford team who've been so impressive, maybe, just maybe, Galway could go even higher in the power rankings next week. But I think Galway at home are probably going to win this. They've been very good under Henry Shefflin so far. Stiffer tests await later in the year to see where they're at championship level, but they haven't put a foot wrong in the league in their first few weeks so far.
Not a tie call for you?
For Galway Wexford, it was a tie call. I think I don't think any of the four of us are saying that this is going to be a hammering in favour of Galway. I think that we've all kind of weighed this up and said that Galway are going to probably edge this one. What was there was big talk of not only of Galway being not great in the hurling pod. That's probably not doing James Skehill justice there. But of Wexford being amazing, like that was the whole point here. That was the whole point about Galway being played down, was that Wexford are class. So clearly, you weren't buying the argument. You were sitting there on the hurling pod, Will, silently disagreeing vehemently with what you were hearing.
I was very, very, very aware that James Skehill was going to play Galway down, because the last thing he wants to do is to say, right, here we are, a couple of rounds into the league. Galway look fantastic, and then straight away someone will turn and say, hey, wait a minute, remember 2021 when everyone was talking about Galway were going to beat Limerick in the summer, and then as it transpired, Galway's summer entirely fizzled out. It's about Galway being at that level where they can be a realistic contender for the All-Ireland Championship when we get into June and into July. That's what really matters, not where they're at in late February, but we'll get a real feeling for where both teams are at this weekend. I think for Wexford, this is probably bonus territory if they can go and get a win in Salt Hill. Galway will be expected to win. But if they both play with the intensity they have in the first 2 weeks, we could get a really good game of hurling in Salt Hill.
And the last fixture we have to look at here is Limerick Cork, Aisling, and we're all going for Limerick across the board. Like Cork can plaster that one up on the dressing room wall because they've been tipping along nicely, and Limerick have not. But I'm certainly starting this one by applying some of my Dublin logic in that it's got to come right.
Yeah, I think so. Yet to get a win, so this has to be the time, is the way I look at it. Repeated the All-Ireland final as well. So I think there's a strong rivalry between the two teams. Cork will be hoping probably that this is their chance to get one over Limerick, after that hurt. And the fact that they haven't won a game yet. But I think for Limerick, this result, it's not of paramount importance, I don't think, for them. But it does serve an opportunity for them to build momentum ahead of the championship. It's in the Gaelic grounds in Limerick. I think they'll definitely do this one. Not comfortably enough, because Cork have been impressive and they're building year on year. A lot of young players coming through. They're exciting to watch. So I do think it'll be a close game, but I think Limerick will definitely edge this one.
Cavan Lad wonders, what about the other Gaelic football fixtures? I mean, he's talking about the big games. Cavan versus Carlow, for example. As the people of Kerry and Monaghan.
Oh, well,
Cavan nailed on.
Cavan are absolutely nailed on, and I would just like to say that it's not you or I or Will or Aisling who comes up with the fixtures this week. It is Tommy Rooney. So any Monaghan people out there who are disappointed that they are not having their heavyweight clash previewed this Friday, I echo your pain.
I think it was Tommy weighed it up and said, "Listen, that's a gimme for Kerry." So
yeah, Tommy's words. Tommy, there's a lot of disagreements in this studio with that.
That's quick picks.